Hey yo, Toshi here. Today we'll be going over Sosuke Yang.
This guy stinks!
The ability is known for its debuffers such as Silver Wolf, Pela, and Welt, right? With Welt having very nice debuff capabilities, he'll be a very nice character to have on your account overall. Aside from how the character looks, and first of all, having a playable version of Welt is very nice. Especially for all you manga fans, right, of the Honkai universe. But anyways, let's get into the video. His basic attack deals imaginary damage equal to 110% at max levels to a single enemy. Important to keep in mind that nearly every single character seems to have these same multipliers for their basic attack. Very interesting to note. I'm not sure if this is in correlation to keeping all the characters relatively balanced for the future. If that's the case, then I gotta say I'm very happy about that because having power creep in this game would be a very, very sad thing to see. His elemental skill, Edge of the Void, is a bouncing skill. So bouncing meaning an attack like Asta's elemental skill also that launches on multiple enemies. It is random, so it's not the first enemy you hit that constantly gets hit by the skill, but it will be random, so it will hit many different enemies. It could land on the same enemy twice, but that's RNG. Slashes the enemy 3 times, so it's going to be a 3-hit attack, dealing imaginary damage equal to 79% of Volt's attack to a random enemy at max levels. On hit, there is a 77% chance at max levels to reduce the enemy's speed by 10% for 2 turns. If you land this, great, but since it is a 77% chance, your likelihood of missing at one time is very, very likely. The cool thing about this bounce skill, if you're not familiar with how Asta works, if you're fighting a single enemy or a boss in this case, right, the attack will hit that enemy 3 times in this case, 3 times. So you have a lot of shield break potential, a lot of toughness bar break reduction potential, because you're hitting the enemy multiple times with that skill. That's part of the reason why Asta is a very nice character to use against fire weakness enemies, because you're hitting the enemy over and over and over again with the elemental skill, which makes for massive shield break potential. That and you will land the speed reduction on the enemy for sure. Welt's ultimate attack, Synthetic Black Hole, I gotta say the animation and the name of the ult really did the manga version of Welt a huge favor. It looks really good. I'll probably have it on the screen. It is a 120 energy cost ult, which is pretty expensive if you think about it. It deals imaginary damage equal to 162% of Volt's attack to all enemies. There is a 100% base chance for enemies hit by this ability to be imprisoned. So what this means is whenever you delay the actions of an enemy, you push down where they are in the turn order. So for instance, let's say Welt puts a reduce action on the boss and the boss is going right after Welt. That enemy will then go after other characters because the action delay will have taken effect. So you just delay their action in the turn order. That's pretty much how it works in this game. But since it hits all enemies, yeah, you're going to be imprisoning every single enemy that gets hit by this ability. That is massive. So massive. Time distortion is his talent, and if the enemy is already slowed, deals additional imaginary damage equal to 66% at max levels of Welt's attack to the enemy. Think of this like Dan Hang's ultimate multiplier increase whenever the enemy is slowed. It's pretty much the same thing. After using Welt's technique, creates a small black hole zone that lasts for 15 seconds. Every enemy that enters that zone will have their movement speed decreased by 50%. It's massive. 50% speed reduction is huge. So huge. Upon entering battle in the black hole zone, there is a 100% chance for the enemies to become imprisoned. And those imprisoned enemies with the technique will have their actions delayed by 20% and their speed reduced by 10%. So this pretty much will always ensure that you get the first turn whenever the battle starts. Another thing to keep in mind, if you not played Honkai Star Rail for the first time, how you trigger the technique for any character in the game is whenever you use their elemental skill on the enemy before the battle starts. You will then trigger the technique depending on whatever the technique description is. In this case, it is a movement speed decrease and an action bar delay. Okay, so I had to change this part of the video, but now Welt's A2 trace actually, whenever using the ultimate, the enemies affected by the ultimate will receive a percentage damage for X amount of turns. So this is a new change to Welt's kit, gives him more utility, and he no longer has the flat damage increase for his ultimate. Instead, it's a team-wide damage buff on the target. At A4, he regenerates 10 energy after using the ultimate ability. It doesn't seem like much, but you have to take into consideration how expensive his ult costs anyways. Having that additional energy restoration is very good for a character that has a pretty, let's be honest, that ult is pretty expensive. Well, then does 20% more damage to enemies inflicted with weakness breaks at A6. This will be the late game trace you get when, well, I just said it late game. I don't know why I said late game before trace. That kind of messed up the sentence and the way it sounded like in my head. 20% more damage on top of the damage you already do whenever you inflict a weakness break on the enemy. One thing to note is that since Welt's elemental skill hits the enemy 3 times if you're fighting bosses, you will most of the time have this 20% damage increase all the time because you're going to be inflicting weakness break on the enemy anyways. So keep that in mind. And we could go over the Eidolons, but free to play probably won't get many of these. I'll go over the important ones here. His Eidolon level 2, Constellation 2, whenever his talent is triggered, right? Well, and regenerates 3 energy. So it's important to keep this in mind. The energy restoration is going to be very nice for a character that has massive all costs, right? 120 is nothing to sneeze at. The important Eidolon to also note is Eidolon level 4. Whenever Welt uses his ultimate, there's a 100% chance to increase the damage the target receives that is hit by Welt's ult by 12% for 2 turns. This is going to be a net DPS increase for your whole team because your team is going to be hitting that target that has the 12% damage increase. So overall, a very nice buff for your team, especially for a character like Den Heng who wants all the damage he needs in order to one-shot with his ultimate. And lastly, his Eidolon level 6 is probably the best one here. Whenever you use Welt's skill, you'll deal damage for 1 additional time to a random enemy. Very important to note, that means his elemental skill will hit 4 times instead of 3, which adds for more DPS, more shield break potential, and more chances to slow the enemy. Another thing to note is whenever you hit the boss, right, you're fighting one single enemy here, in this case a boss, that's going to be massive shield break potential. Just like Asta, whenever you lock her Eidolon Constellation 1, you have more shield break potential because you're constantly hitting the enemy with that elemental skill. This is the same instance because you're hitting the enemy more times, which in turn makes more shield break. Very massive. But it is level 6, so yeah, don't expect to get this. He has 102 base speed, which in the grand scheme of things is faster than characters like Bronya, which does help Welt out a lot, especially when he wants to constantly lap the enemy by taking turns and slowing the enemy and delaying action bar. Very nice to have a decent base speed. And lastly, this is the splash art for Welt. I gotta say, Hoya really did really good with the way the art looks. It adds a lot of flavor to the character, especially if you are a fan of Welt in the Honkai universe overall. Really nice. It has a lot of Easter eggs hidden in it. Well, I wouldn't say hidden, they're kind of shown in plain sight, but it does add a lot of flavor and enriches the character overall. Okay, so there is multiple ways to obtain Welt. The very first way is on the departure or newbie banner, as I like to call it. This is the banner you'll get as soon as you load into the game. You have a 1 in 7 chance of obtaining this character at the half pity that you will be summoning on. And yeah, 1 in 7 chance to obtain a character. Need I say more? Next up, we have the standard banner. You have a 1 in 14 chance of obtaining Welt on this banner. With that being said, you have more of a chance of obtaining him here than the actual, I would say, newbie banner, as surprisingly as I'm saying that, because you will be hitting this banner multiple times instead of just hitting it one time and only being able to hit it one time. That's the reason why I say you have more chances of hitting him here, even though it is a 1 in 14 chance at that. The third way to obtain Welt is on the limited banner. So whenever there is rotational banners, in this case Jing Wong for the example, you have a pretty much 50% chance at pity or before pity, either a standard character or a limited character. And let's just say you lose 50-50. I forbid this, right? I hope everyone wins their 50-50, but the reality situation is, let's just say you lose it. You have a 1 in 7 chance of obtaining Welt because there's only 7 characters on the standard banner currently. You can obtain Welt on the character 5-star selector, and this is 300 pulls into the standard banner. So after 300 pulls on the standard banner and the beginner banner pulls do not count, you can get one of these 7 characters here. Always recommend, if you have Bailu and Bronya, I suggest you go for Welt because he is the 3rd best option out of all the characters that are present on the screen here. Now lastly, I want to mention one thing before we end the video here. I did say that I was going to stop making, I would say, guide-like content, But the only reason why I'm uploading videos like this is because of the YouTube algorithm. As you all know, the game has not came out yet. We have a week currently before the game does go live. And once the game does go live, then the content we have on this channel will change. I kind of wanted to do this anyways because even when the game does launch, a lot of you will probably want to know how to use the character, how to play the character, or if you should actually go for the character, right? And to answer all of those questions, the reason why I would put out the videos anyways is because we will go over every single character, kind of describe what they do in a short, condensed way, so you can understand how to use the character effectively whenever you do play the game for the first time. Part of the reason why I put out the videos for each and every single character anyways. But I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you all for watching and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.